Hey friends, let's do a deep dive on this Vanquish Phoenix with an RC four-wheel drive 4Runner body on it. When I do these deep dives, my plan is to just go into super boring, minute detail about everything I did to the vehicle for anyone who wants to really know all the deep details. So grab a cold one or a hot one or whatever you want to do, and let's check out this truck. So you can see I don't have a top on here. The top is really heavy, and by not having it, you can really lower the center of gravity of the vehicle. And when I was a kid and me and my friends went around in these, we went around with the top off. So it's really sort of normal to me to not have the cover on this. And like I say, it helps with the weight. These fender flares are made by RC four-wheel drive. People have asked me where I got them, and they thought I made them and things like that. These are just RC four-wheel drive fender flares. I can't remember if these are specific to the 4Runner or if these were the ones for the extra cab. They might have been the extra cab ones, but either way, you can see how they worked out on here. This is a 1.9 wheel from SSD RC that I got a while back. And then of course these are some pretty small tires on here. These are 3.9s. These are Proline, BFG, Crawler, TA, and then a 3.9. This guy in here, he's from Planet of the Apes. And I think it's Taylor. I have Taylor and Brett, and Brett's. I think this one's Taylor, and the coat that he's wearing actually came from him. That's Al Bundy, and I took all the. There was a tie on him, like a tie, and it was all stitched on. So I unstitched that, and then I put that jacket on him. Usually on these trucks, you've got to cut the guy's legs off to make them fit in there, because the seats and the floors are actually higher than in real life, and so you wind up sort of cutting his butt off and cutting his legs off. And I like to leave I saw Mike's RCH, friend of mine, do this. He just leaves the pant legs, glues them on down to the seat like this, and when it's in there, it really looks like there's legs in there. And of course, the door's closed anyway most of the time, and you don't see it. So the paint colors, this one has all Tamiya paint on it. I don't always like to use Tamiya paint because it's really expensive and it comes in tiny cans and it goes on really thin. But one of the things that's nice about it is it's really forgiving because it's really thin. It tends not to puddle up. It seems like when you do puddle it up, it kind of flattens itself back out again. It's just, I describe it as forgiving as far as the paint. So if you're not very experienced with painting, you might try using some of that Tamiya can paint. Like I say, it's kind of stupid expensive, and when you can get away with using something else, you should. But I wound up using a lot of Tamiya on this build. So that's a tan. I think it's called AS17. It's a military color of tan that I used for the interior. It's like an aircraft, it's a war color for tanks and stuff. This is another Tamiya color. I want to say it's TS28. I don't know. And then this is a white, pure white. This is a little bed liner. I've made these bed liners for a few different of the chassis that are out there, and it'll come off when I take the body off here in a minute. But let's see what else is there to show you on this. You can see this one externally, as far as the body goes, it's very, very stock. I didn't even do anything into the hood area in here. This is all just stock. I was able to keep the fender liners from the Vanquish Phoenix. I had to chop them up quite a bit, but I got them in there. I always like to paint with a fine tip paint pen or something else and get in between the grill in there with the paint. I think it makes it look a lot more realistic than just having a solid chrome grill. Also, this whole bumper is painted black, but a little hint, if you build one of these and you're gonna leave the bumper chrome, this part was never chrome. This part was a black piece of plastic. So even if you're gonna leave that part of the bumper chrome, you ought to go in and paint that part black if you want it to be really authentic looking. Of course, I went with all black bumpers anyway. Here's what the back of this guy looks like. Now, if you've been looking at these pictures, you'll notice that this is not a regular Phoenix because this has F10T axles on it. So these are a machined aluminum axle that Vanquish makes as an upgrade replacement to these. So this is not a portal version. This is a straight axle version. And I didn't drive it for a really long time after building it. It was done and I just didn't want to drive it. And really the reason is, I think, because I'm just not a huge fan of portals. And I know you're looking over here and, well, that Traxxas has portals, and it's true, it does. And they're not very drastic on that truck. And I don't know, the way that truck sits is cool with me and everything. So I'm kind of okay with them. But the portals that were on here, I wasn't scale enough for me. And another thing that happens with the portals, and there's ways to compensate for this, but I want you guys to know that if you buy our body mounts for a 4Runner on a Phoenix, this is how the axles will line up if you use a straight axle kit or if you convert to straight axles. But if you have portal axles in the front, they build so much caster into those front portals that the front axle actually is going to appear to sit a few millimeters forward of this wheel well. I don't change them up for the different whether you have portal, whether you have straight axle. I only make one set of body mounts, and I do that because of the way the rear end gets changed, and I want that to be consistent across the board. So what that means is if you have a portal version of one of these, out of the box built, your front axle is going to sit a little bit further forward, and there's various ways to compensate for that. You can adjust it, you can cut your fenders differently. You can choose to go with straight axles like this. The portals on this truck wasn't doing it for me. I wanted straight axles. So that's a little real in-depth on some of that stuff. So when I changed to the straight axles, I did change the spur gear. And that's about the only thing I changed. You can look up what size it's supposed to be when you change it. I always get it backwards, but whatever it had, I think it had a 56 and you had to put in a 52. It's that or it's the exact opposite, so you're welcome. Let's see, let's take the body off of this guy now and take a look at what's going on inside, because that's just about everything to see on the outside. I like to use acrylic paint on these turn signals from the inside. Oh, wow, I almost forgot. My good friend, Alberto, Ampro Engineering, is where these taillights came from. And these are a fantastic upgrade to the stock taillights as far as scale appearance goes. I will say that they're resin printed, and so you should have an expectation they're not going to be exactly as durable as the molded parts that you would get. And I actually did a smash right here, but I glued it all up and now it just looks like an authentic smashed taillight. But these are a really nice upgrade. You do have to do some pretty major cutting in the body, and then they're glued in place. They're put in differently than the original ones, but they give a really stunning presentation. And I'll just put the asterisk next to it that you want to take a little bit more care with them than you would with a normal molded taillight. But it loses all the extra screws, and these light up beautifully. I've seen them lit up. He actually is a lighting designer, and so he understands how the lights should function and refract the light. And so when you see these lit up, they're beautiful. I hate wiring, so I didn't wire these, but thank you Ampro for these taillights, and you can find him on YouTube. He has a very popular YouTube channel. Let's take this body off of here. Someone wrote to me to tell me that they saw that this little screwdriver is back up on Amazon. This is called a Brescinon. I have no affiliation with them. And in fact, I have no affiliation with anybody. When you see me talking about parts that I like or parts that I don't like, I am not affiliated with any company. I do have affiliate links for A-Main Hobbies, and you'll find links for their products in our post. And they're great. The reason I decided to partner with them is I've been shopping with them for a long time, and the customer service is really good. Everybody's prices are the same everywhere. So, it just comes down to availability and customer service. And I've been really happy with them. So let's see, let's take this body off here. We're gonna take Taylor off. Is there anything else to show you in the interior? Oh, this is kind of cool. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little CB radio in here that I made. I made that for I'm gonna turn this around so hopefully from some angle it shows up, but there's a CB in there. I made that for an extra cab that was on that body over there. And I put the Vanquish steering wheel in there as well. Since it's sitting on the Vanquish chassis, it needs that steering wheel is a little bit cooler looking than the one that it comes with. So here's a little bed liner in here that I made. We have these liners, and the reason I made these is when you cut your holes back here to clear the shock towers, as I've done. You saw that, right? You cut those holes to clear the shock towers. Maybe they didn't come out clean, looks kind of messy, you don't like the way it came out. So I've got these on the website, and you can cut these with a razor blade. You take this, set it down, mark out, you know, a cleaner hole, actually cut it cleanly with like an X-Acto knife, and now you've got a piece you can drop in and cosmetically just kind of clean up the hole back there. And I have these for most of the bodies. Let's look at the bottom of this, because this is kind of key. I wanted to show you this. There's two really critical parts here. This cut is something that everyone will have to do who puts this body or an extra cab on a Vanquish. When you put the 4Runner or the extra cab on the Vanquish, the motor that you can see here, the shape of the motor is right there in the transmission, and I have it slipping up through that hole right there inside. Most of that winds up getting hidden by the dash and the rest of the interior. You don't even really notice it. But and one thing kind of cool, I actually have, these are the little shifters that are on the actual transmission, and those pop up through the center. So when you look inside at the shifters, those are really there on there. They don't actually function, of course, but it's still kind of a cool look. Now that cut is a cut that everyone will have to do. These two cuts are cuts that you will need to do if you use a low profile shift servo on here. You put a low profile dig servo back here, it'll fill up in this space and it'll hide underneath the seat just like that. And if you put a low profile shift servo over here for the overdrive selector, then you would need a notch like this under your seat. And you can see where I've notched out below the seat and everything. And I had those servos in here. I wanted to make sure it would all fit and it would all work, but I don't care, so I took them out. But I wanted to make sure that it would all fit, and I wanted to demonstrate how you make it fit. And those are all the notching and cutting out that you need to do under there. The rest of this hasn't been modified, other than I did open up the fender wells. All the fender wells are cut open. You have the holes for the shock tower, hole for the rear dig, hole for the overdrive, hole for the transmission. As you know, some of these are required, some of them are optional. It depends on what you do for the rear. That's the bottom of that truck. Now we're getting down to not much left to show, because as you can see, this is a very, very stock chassis. Most of our kits require you to, our body mount systems require you to remove a whole bunch of stuff from the sides. And you can see I've removed a whole bunch of stuff from this. And here you can see where our body mount attaches to the factory side plate. So you basically strip everything down all the way down to this side plate. And then our piece is just this little guy right here, and it snaps over on the outside of that, and you put 2 screws in it, here and here, here and here. Then this is that's really good for that. I do that all the time just to make sure that you know, everything is gonna fall the way it should fall, and it did. It fell exactly the way it was supposed to fall, so that's good. This piece is a piece that supports the bed, because there's not a lot of structure under that door. When you do a 4Runner build, look in here, there's not a ton of structure down here, keeping all of this body, you know, you're putting all that pressure of the whole body on these 2 little guys. And that's why I want to have some support back here from the bed, so it gets, you know, if it gets hit this way, it's not just trying to break itself off of these mounts. So I include, when you get those body mounts, this piece is included, screws down here and here, and it's supporting the bed. And if you want to, you can actually drill holes in your bed and run screws down into this too and really secure it. I don't do that. I just let it ride on that surface, and then I put the screws up here. This is otherwise just like a really stock chassis. Yeah, I mean, other than the very expensive machined axles, it's a very stock chassis. This is another little Hack Moto Yeah Racing 35T motor, brushed motor, brushed 1080p. My little Futaba receiver. This is a little, I made a little battery tray thingy to go here that kind of just fits in that space, and that's where I run a 2200 milliamp hour battery. Got my Reef servo up here. This has been a very good servo. Trying to remember if those were the springs that came on here or if I swapped those out for something stiffer. And we're getting into my memory issues now, but I don't know if those are the stock. I don't remember now if those were the stock springs. Those might be something else. You know what I did do when I changed from the portals to the straight axles? I added a 5mm extension from Incision on each one of these shocks. They're the little, it's like the ball end that you replace on the end of the shock. Gave it 5mm more extension because you lose about 10mm when you switch from the portals to the straight axles. Vanquish servo horn. That's it. Like I say, I keep pointing it out, but it's not an overly complicated build, and there weren't a lot of complicated things to do. Oh, really important, last thing, the rear. This is an 11.4-inch wheelbase. The Vanquishes all come with approximately 12.3-inch wheelbase with, like I said, they're actually a little bit longer on the Portal versions, but they're 12.3-inch wheelbases, and to get the rear axle to line up on a 11.4-inch body like this, all you've got to do, and I'm purposely showing this the simplest way possible. You can get more complicated if you want, but the simplest way to get this wheelbase down to the exact correct length for this, these are just axial rear links for an 11.4-inch wheelbase. That's all they are. They're a stock set of axial rear links for an 11.4-inch wheelbase, and there's part numbers for that I can provide as well. Thanks for watching, guys. That's the last, that's the next deep dive done. And here, I thought it was pretty cool the way those front fenders are on there still. Here we all back together. Taylor says thanks. Have a good one.